welcome back to my channel Escape to Storyland. Today I'm going to read another story which is a love story. But before I start, do subscribe to my channel, do hit the like button and do hit the bell icon for further notification. So let's go. Why do you always have to make a mess out of everything? Lauren yelled at Nixon. Everything was just half cleaned and it's destroyed again. I would like to be out of this place by 11 p.m., not next morning. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to find what you yelled at me to find, Nixon snapped back. Lauren was frustrated because the party host, who said they would help clean up the party area, left with the rest of the guests, leaving her and Nixon to clean up the area before different people arrived the next morning. Nixon was unsure about everything. He was tired but didn't want to stress Lauren any more than she already was. Even though he didn't want to, he still had by messing up what was already cleaned, looking for something small. He felt terrible and was looking at the ground like a guilty dog. He felt like a guilty dog. After a few minutes of silence, Nixon chose his words very carefully, hoping not to make Lauren burst out. Do you want me to move and stay out of your way? He said softly, still looking at the ground. Lauren was pushing stuff around angrily into places. When she heard Nixon speak the way, she looked up. Her expression softened. No, I'm sorry, I snapped at you, she said, making her way towards him. She wrapped him in a hug. She was acting like it was solely for him, but she was the one who needed him in the first place. They stayed in their hug in silence for a few minutes, and Lauren buried her face into Nixon and started quietly crying. Nixon started sliding to the floor with Lauren in his arms until they were both sitting on the ground. He held her in her lap, swaying slightly and letting Lauren cry and relieve herself of some emotion and worry. Where do you think we should continue? The front area, the bar, or the dining hall? Nixon quietly asked. Lauren searched her mind for a good answer, trying to figure out what to do. Soon, she said, how about the dining hall? After that, we'll work our way to the bar and finally to the front area where the doors are so we can leave right away. Nixon smiled. Good idea. Let's get going. They walked into the dining hall, which was the only room they hadn't touched at all. Yet, they braced themselves for the worst. They didn't brace themselves hard enough. There were broken glasses on the floor and tables, trash everywhere, empty wine glass in random places, and food, mostly cake, everywhere. They looked up to see handkerchief hanging from few of the chandeliers. How are we going to get this clean tonight? Lauren yelled, overwhelmed by just looking at it. She did not know where to start or what to do. Nixon stood in disbelief at what he saw. I thought this was supposed to be a prime fancy party, not a game of trash. Lauren started to take deep breaths, thinking through a plan in her head of what to do. But to be honest, she couldn't have been further from sure. Eventually, she decided what to do first. She was unsure what to do after, but she figured out as she went. Let's get the handkerchiefs off the chandeliers, since there are only few and we can put them in baskets. as well as tablecloths once we get them off. But first, then, she stated, looking determined at the ceiling to get them down. Get a ladder, please, Nixon. 5 minutes later, I'm too short. How am I supposed to reach these things? Lauren yelled at the handkerchief, as if it would just come down for her just for yelling at it. Nixon was watching from the side, smiling at her, trying her best, but not saying anything. He was somewhat enjoying this, just waiting for her to finally lay down her pride for a minute and ask for help. After a few more minutes, Lauren sighed and looked at Nixon. Could I please maybe get a little help? Nixon smiled and jokingly bowed. It would be my pleasure, my lady. This little act made Lauren crack a smile, pretty stupidly looking at Nixon, and she felt a little flutter in her chest, although she pushed it away as she climbed off the ladder. Let me try to reach that from the ladder where you were, Nixon said. He took a look up the ladder and slowly started climbing. By the time he got to the top, he was within arm's reach of the handkerchief. He reached up and easily grabbed it before looking down at Lauren with a bragging-like expression. Lauren crossed her arms and held her breath, embarrassed about asking for help, and then seeing someone else do it easily. Catch! Nixon yelled as he threw the handkerchief down towards her. Got it, she says, running toward it, before missing it by inches and it falls on the ground. Never mind, I got it. I don't got it, she says, looking at the ground, ashamed as she didn't even do that correctly. She walked over to the place where it fell and picked it up as Nixon came down from the ladder. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's just a handkerchief. So what if you missed it? She looked up, trying not to cry from something stupid. I can't seem to do anything correctly tonight. First, I made you feel terrible. Then, I couldn't even reach the handkerchief. Then after you got it, I couldn't even catch it. I should be the one sitting to the side, staying out of the way. No, don't say that. Nixon looked at Lauren in her eyes and continued talking. Everyone makes mistakes like that. Neither of us even knew we would be cleaning up after this party. You're just tired. We can do it together. So don't even think you are in anyone's way. Now come on, let's get the rest of the things ready. You start by cleaning the tables and put the dishes into the basket, as I get the rest of the things from the chandelier. They shared a quiet glance before splitting up to continue working. They finished their first two tasks relatively quickly and looked out at the room from a place to the side. I think we have done an amazing job so far. It looks much better, Nixon said confidently. Don't get too excited yet. We still have lots to do. There are still 2 more places to clean. And we haven't even finished this one. Now go, start washing dishes, as I take tablecloths off to wash later as we wear. Lauren reminded Nixon. Soon, Nixon left to go wash dishes, and Lauren looked at the tablecloth, which were white. Many had been stained, and all were disgusting. Lauren slowly started peeling them off tables, holding her nose even though they weren't that terrible. She threw them into a big bin with a handkerchief from earlier. Slowly working her way around the room, she got all of them before going back to check on Nixon. Hey Nixon, how are you doing with the dishes? Good. I am about halfway done, he replied. Only halfway? Lauren was shocked. I thought you would be finished by now. With how long that took me? Nixon looked down. Are you mad? I'm sorry. Lauren cut him off. No, sorry. I'm just stressed. What if I were to help you? I bet you would have done it much faster. Good idea, Lauren said as Lauren walked over and stood beside him to begin. Before she started, she pulled her hair up to be out of the way. Nixon couldn't help but stare at her as she did this because she never put her hair up. He felt his heart flutter as she started to work. Why are you looking at me that way? Lauren asked, looking into his eyes. Nixon was quite surprised she noticed him and quickly looked at the sink. Nothing, He paused and in a whisper said, You're so pretty with your hair up. What was that? Lauren said, turning Nixon's head to look at her. Nixon turned his whole body and grabbed her in a low hug. You, my lady, are absolutely stunning with your hair up. Lauren turned red and looked at the ground. Her heart was pumping into 1,000,000 beats a minute. She couldn't come up with something good to say back, so she shoved herself into Nixon's hug and squeaked out a thank you. They hugged each other, both longing for something much more than a hug deep down, but afraid to say anything to each other. Let's get this done now, Nixon said awkwardly. Yeah, Lauren answered. She quickly pulled away from Nixon, looked down at the dishes, feeling embarrassed for all that just had happened. They got the dishes done within half an hour. Then they moved on the final thing in the dining room, which was sweeping the floors. They both started on either side and worked their way to the middle. By the time they both made it to the middle, there were a lot of trash to sweep up into the dustpan and throw away. But all that mattered to them is that they were finally done. Now that this room is done, we are much closer to finishing, my lady, Nixon said to Lauren. Would you please stop calling me my lady? Lauren yelled at Nixon, annoyed and hiding the fact that she loved it. Aw, you're no fun, my lady, Nixon teased. Seriously? Lauren looked at Nixon, clearly annoyed. Fine, I'll stop, Nixon replied, holding in a chuckle. Lauren rolled her eyes. Come on, doofus, let's start at the next area, which is the bar. The bar was relatively easy, since the bartender seemed to be a neat freak and kept almost everything clean. The most they ended up having to do was to take the trash out, restock the cabinets, and then wash a few dishes and pick up any clothes to wash. That was easy, and it took only a few minutes with both of us working. Wow, Nixon said proudly towards Lauren. Yup, but I'm completely exhausted. What time is it? Lauren asked Nixon carefully. 10 p.m. it seems. And when was dinner again? Around 6? So it's been 4 hours since we started. Wow! I just wish we were out of here by now, Nixon sighed. Yeah, me too. But we can't linger on that. She paused. But it's gonna be okay. We can do this. We're so close. Then let's do it already. Grabbing Nixon by the arm and dragged him to the front area to start cleaning. Nixon smiled, seeing Lauren get the sudden burst of energy, and it rejuvenated him as well to get going on it. They started by packing boxes of decorations which were closed into the attic. Soon, they started packing loose decorations to be put in the attic as well. Nixon picked up chairs and stacked them into the closet, where they went, and pretty soon they had most of the room done. Lauren looked out of the room and then at Nixon. I'm tired and this room isn't very big. Do you mind sweeping it for me? She looked down, ashamed, as she asked. Nixon bowed. Of course, my lady. Anything for you. He smiled as he looked up at her in his bow. If only she knew I actually loved her, not just a joke. He thought as he walked away to start. If only he knew I actually loved him, and I'm not annoyed at all, she sighed quietly as he started sweeping on the other side of the room. A few minutes later, he had the room swept and started looking around for Lauren. Soon, he found her fast asleep against the wall by the door. That's adorable, he said, walking towards her. Giving her a kiss on the forehead, he talked as if she was listening. I guess you really are tired. Good night, my lady. Sweet dreams. Before he sat down beside her, she didn't know he loved her so, but helping her tonight was simply all he needed to fall in love. And he would never get over this girl. We will be together one day, my lady. Even if that's not now, I am willing to wait for you. Nixon thought before moving her to a laying position and falling asleep together on the ground. That was the end of our story. I hope you really enjoyed it. Do tune in again for another story. And before that, do subscribe to my channel.